I'm back just now from our morning walk, my dog's and mine, and I met a lady that told me about her excursion into another smaller city around the area that I also considered moving to, well, looking at closely, I'd say, because smaller cities, the distances are shorter to the outskirts where nature begins. Within the bigger cities, you have to look that it's a good one with lots of parks, which is where I actually am. Well, the surprise was that she told me how things have gotten worse there also, and that was actually also my conclusion after lots of restless considerations, that it makes sense to stay where you're at the moment before all the things that are changing at the moment are actually also showing and have changed, or are clearly showing, because otherwise I feel it's not the right time to make relocation changes of moving anywhere or something, because the place where you're at that may be disagreeable will also change into something better when all the changes that are happening everywhere are taking place. So from the way I talk about the challenges on my walks with my dog, you might think, why am I not living somewhere out there in the countryside? And that's actually how I grew up also, so I'm familiar with that, and even long distances also. And the comparison that's going on in my thoughts, or the considerations, are like that. I should actually attend to the pen and the hot fat just now. You know, there are many dog owners outside in the outskirts with larger properties, or let's say just normal gardens, where the dogs don't actually get to see much more than their garden. And if I live in a city which is actually one big garden because of the many parks, but because the dog needs to get out and do his business, you are forced to go outside. And because they are more closely populated encounters, you're also challenged to teach the dog a lot, so that it becomes agreeable. And therefore it's not just get outside the door, do his business and get back indoors, but especially those independent rescue dogs and street dogs need quite an interesting, entertaining walk, challenging their mind and body, in a positive way. And that often doesn't happen if dogs live in a garden, I hear, If it's a large property that you're even taking your walk in your property, then that's totally a different story. But just talking about the change, the challenge, the diversity they get to experience. Another thing is that, of course, it depends on the type of dog, and from my perspective, the situation I'm in now, I'm talking about territorial and livestock guard dog behavior. And so it's actually, the natural way would be, of course, for them to live out on the land, but that natural tendency of them to be protective and territorial in a good way only develops if you let them grow up with the livestock herd from a small age. That's how they think they are one of them and protect them as their own, But if you have them grown up and introduce them to a herd or any property, they will just also be defensive against it. So it's not that you take a grown-up livestock guard dog and they function independently like that, It's just what they consider their own, what they claim they'll protect. And if you put them on a property, they'll circle the property around the edges to measure basically the extent, and from there they will check the content and then protect the content. That's why you don't find, that's why I also have this 5-meter leash to give him space, because naturally he will gravitate towards the outer edge of the surrounding, he won't walk directly close to me, but he will tend to see how much can he expand the territory. That's not a dislike or something, it's just their natural tendency to stretch the boundaries always and expand. And so if I would live somewhere, let's say in a garden, I would do myself no favor, because I'd be sitting in the sun chair with my dog on a leash next to me, which is not very relaxing, because if I'd let him go, he would just patrol the fences all the time, or eat the postman or something. So this way of navigating him in a controlled way, that I'm giving him as much freedom as he can handle to make good decisions with, and then closer and shorter leash if he's not making good decisions. That's a controlled freedom, combining safety and freedom. Or if I would live in the outskirts here, as I often explore on Google Maps, and in many years back explored the surroundings on extended bicycle tours and holidays also. And there are many military grounds, practicing grounds, or shooting ranges or something. So the catastrophe stress on New Year's Eve with all the fireworks is of course very stressful, but I would have fireworks sound all the time, and then he will be shocked and run and flee. So that's not a favor either. Then there's more ticks, even though I'm in quite natural environments, as you saw on the water walk excursion and so on. He doesn't come back with ticks from that. On the outskirts, yes. And another thing, there's also hunting season and breeding season, like where there's not allowed to, it's not allowed to let the dogs off leash in the forest anyway, but you could encounter into wild, game like deer. Then the hunt or rabbit is in the parks here also, or hares or any fowl, and the hunting instinct will just break through, and that would just also maybe confuse the hunter and shoot your dog by accident, Another thing, so he would always be on the lookout, and be really instinctually wild. Another thing, well, not all dogs, but mine definitely. Mine would be totally... There's always the next highest trigger, If everything's quiet and one person walking in the forest he'll see at a distance, his territory goes as far as his view goes, as far as the horizon goes. So he'll always have the next highest trigger, If it's lots, it's the highest. If it's none, it's that one trigger. Another thing, if it's around dusk and the wild boar comes out in the forest, there have been many accidents also where, especially if they have their young, they can really be dangerous and slit open a dog and with their tusks and slit it open, throw it in the air. It's really not to be underestimated how fast these wild boar running engines can be, So that's just a few examples, and there are many pleasant things, of course. You can step out the door and you have a wonderful field directly to walk your dog, and you'll get used to all of those things too. But a dog with territorial properties and hunting instinct, extreme one, and protective. Yeah, it's by nature one to have out in nature with flocks of sheep or something, but only if that's how they grew up and that's how they learned. Not if you introduce them just like that. They'll just handle the herd like any other trigger and threat. Also, there are much more horse riding riders out there. That would be a problem for me also to teach them to. It would be possible, but it's just one other thing that you thought, okay, now you don't have a food delivery, e-bikes, now you have horse riding, then there's cow herds, yes, it's wonderful, but there's electrical fences, not wonderful if your dog needs to learn those, and then of course they also love to roll in cow dung. It's all nature and it's all fine and one can learn all of those things. And just pointing out to myself and to you, once maybe you wondered why I take up all these challenges of the city and the parks, that the surrounding nature would not be without challenges either.